Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We have an interesting development today for the Ravens, not an unexpected one, but Roquan Smith will be wearing the green dot, as Mike McDonald mentioned today. Interesting news, obviously, and here to join me to talk about that and what it means for the Ravens defense is Slava Cooperstein. Slava, how you doing?
Doing fine, Ken. Yourself?
No complaints here. Life is good, and not unexpected that Roquan would get the green dot. I believe he has worn it in Chicago for a period of time already, so it's not a new responsibility. And beyond that, he's a player who we would expect to be on the field pretty much in any package anyway, so it doesn't really hamstring the Ravens in any way.
Yeah, it's. I think the significance of it is really just how long it's been since the linebacker had a green dot, as opposed to Chuck Clark, who took it and did not relinquish it, and I think did quite a good job with it. But now the torch has been passed to Roquan, and I think he's a great candidate.
Yeah, so Clark had it for 4 seasons, and during that time, I think he missed one game, and the guy who took it for that game was Geno Stone. So the Ravens were okay with it at safety. A lot of that was based on the fact that the Ravens didn't have that one linebacker they want to keep on the field for every play. I don't know what their deal was with Queen, but he was never quite 100% player. And they never gave it to, I'm sorry, the Mike linebacker who's escaping me now, Josh Bynes, even though he had worn it previously in his time at Baltimore in 2012. So it's not like he had no experience with it. I believe he may have worn it at Arizona too, but he definitely wore it with the Ravens in his first stint. So it's unusual. It really is typically the strong safety or the Mike linebacker or your 3-down linebacker are really the two positions. You can extend it to some teams will have a free safety doing. The Ravens did have Eric Weddle briefly having the green dot before, but there's really only 4 positions on the field in total that can even have the green dot.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's pretty unsurprising just given the investment that the Ravens very quickly made in Roquan. I mean, I don't think you want to make that change mid-season. I think Clark certainly last season did nothing to make the team want to relinquish the green dot. So I don't think that this is sort of an out of necessity thing so much as it is the Ravens really what their vision for Roquan as an every down player, and he certainly has the skill set. He's got the run defense. He's got the pass coverage. He's a sure tackler. He's very clearly a leader and a tone setter. I think this is a great choice.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because the Ravens drafted another linebacker, of course, this year in Trenton Simpson. They certainly must expect big things for him to make the kind of investment. I know Harbaugh talked about having a great special teams player, but they didn't use a 3rd-round draft pick on a great special teams player. They used a 3rd-round draft pick because he's the best football player on their board, and that's primarily due to his defense. Where he gets on the field is a matter of interest, but I don't see a path for him to get on easily without one of 2 things happen. Either space is made at weak side linebacker by either injury or some sort of effectiveness on a down and distance basis to get in there for Patrick Queen. So Queen or Roquan could certainly get hurt, in which case I think it becomes Simpson and the other as the 2 inside linebackers. I don't buy into this entire joker role being created for Simpson. It doesn't really seem to make sense to me. In order for the Ravens to do it, they'd really have to change their scheme to be a 3-man down line scheme, because I think they are kind of committed to the defensive backs that they have, and particularly Hamilton at that slot corner position, or maybe somebody else at that slot corner position. The only way they would end up with Simpson on the field in that case would seem to be, to me, if you had a really mediocre slot corner who you wanted to have a versatile pass rush and some coverage slot corner, maybe you could fit Simpson in there. But anyway, the point I'm making is that you're already backed up at linebacker in a way that you really have become a committed nickel team going forward. And so when you're a committed nickel team, your first linebacker is definitely always going to be on the field. And so Roquan wearing the green dot makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a tough path for for Simpson, except in particular packages where they think that a trait of his, whether he ends up being a good pass rusher or something, could be advantageous. I'm expecting a really good season from Patrick Queen, actually. I think that he was already showing improvement before Roquan got there, and had taken a significant step forward, I think. And I expect that he is going to be playing to earn a big contract somewhere other than Baltimore, because he can't invest that much money at the middle linebacker position. So I certainly, that is an interesting development, but obviously the green dot solidifies that Roquan will be on the field all the time.
We just got finished talking about J.K. Dobbins and his future, and that it may not be in Baltimore, and that's certainly possible given how the Ravens have invested in Jackson, and all their long-term contracts now need to be put under the microscope in terms of how they assign their foundational dollars. But the best we can hope for is a huge year out of Dobbins in 2023. The same goes for Queen. A big year. Hope he gets paid, by someone by the Ravens at the Ravens price, or by another team at a very, very high price and as high a price as possible, in order to maximize the comp pick they'll get for Queen. But honestly, it's the good problem to have. If you're consistently having to make heartbreaking decisions about your players who you drafted, and you'd really love to keep these players around, if you can't do it for everyone, that's the good position to be in. There's a lot of organizations, they don't draft enough good players, and they're stuck trying to decide which mediocre players they want to give a big contract to. Well, that's not an ideal situation. Or which positions that might not benefit the team the most, they want to give a big contract to. And they end up having to get more of their talent from free agency and overpaying for it there. So it's obviously much better if you can do what the Ravens do: draft your players, keep the ones you can, and build your franchise around them.
Do you think that there is an appreciable difference in moving the green dot between the sort of the strong safety and middle linebacker position, or do you think that is sort of overstated?
So the thing that was told to me by Dean Pease, because I asked him, have you thought about moving the green dot to safety at one time in the past? And he said, well, the safeties can do it. But if they're covering a 9 route, or they're on the back end of a deep coverage, it makes it more difficulty for them spatially to get back, get the call, get it communicated, and then get back to their position, which may again be deep off the line of scrimmage for a given play. So he liked to have that the green dot at usually at one of the two inside linebacker spots, and I think they did during the Pease era always have that. They had it with C.J. Mosley certainly. But anyway, I think it was Darryl Smith for the first 5 games of C.J. Mosley's rookie year. Then it was C.J. Mosley for the rest of the time. And that might have been the entire Pease era, because it would have been, it was a cobbling together of 2012 inside linebackers in Pease first year, when it was Lewis was hurt for a lot of the season, came back for the playoffs, of course, but Bynes had it for a while, and McLean had it for some games and whatnot. So it was a different inside linebackers for that period, but I believe it was always an inside linebacker during the Pease era. And then the Ravens became, during the McDonald era, more of a team that was willing to give the dot to a safety. And they gave it to Weddle briefly when Owasu just kind of cratered in the first or second game against Cincinnati in 2018. And then they gave it to Clark eventually in 2019 after 4 games. It was in 2019, I'm sorry, because it was Owasu in 2019. But they gave it to Clark after the 5th game of that year. Tony Jefferson took it briefly. So it's been a lot of safeties have had it too for the Ravens, and it's been more safeties than linebackers during the Martindale era, and so far with McDonald for 1 year with Clark.
I wonder whether they see this as a path of getting more of their sort of free safety type of safeties on the field, because
Great point.
If you have Hamilton literally playing slot corner on a given play, you could have somebody who's a little, maybe a little bit more of the free safety mold, playing in what would have otherwise been the strong safety position. and that offers you a little bit of coverage flexibility that you might not have otherwise had.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I hadn't thought of it, but if you really think about who else might be reasonable, the Ravens might have a break their mold player in terms of a guy who could wear the green dot in Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton, I expect him to be on the field pretty much every play. One of the issues is he's a nickel, but I think this year his usage is maybe going to change a little bit, and he'll be playing the back end when they only have 4 defensive backs on the field. I think that was part of Chuck Clark moving on was they want to make sure they've got room to play him every down, and I still think he's going to probably be the slot corner when they go to nickel and have that. He's not exactly like Tyrann Mathieu, so it feels funny to compare him to the Honey Badger, but he gives the Ravens a lot of different things wherever he plays. Maybe comparing him to Derwin James, it might be a more appropriate, an apt comparison for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly just that, given that spatial, removing that kind of spatial restraint that is imposed by having the green dot, I think plays very nicely into the really, really interesting safety room that we have. So maybe we're overthinking this, and it's just a matter of Roquan's experience and just knowing that he's going to be there every down. But certainly it's intriguing.
Whenever I hear somebody saying maybe we're overthinking this, I think, what, you got somewhere else to be? it's like, what else are you going to think about except football? So it's
right.
Seriously, I think it's a reasonable thing to think about. I think it's a very interesting point, Slava, in terms of the Ravens, having 3 free safety style players, in the back end. They don't have an obvious strong safety right now. Maybe Brandon Stevens ends up being that guy, or maybe they even sign somebody from outside the organization and bring him in still to be. I know they had discussions with other safeties this offseason.
Yeah, I think chief among them would be Amos, who now replaces a sadly injured Chuck Clark. I'm not sure whether that was a season ender, but I know that they thought it was going to be a serious one. So,
Yeah, tough to hear. But otherwise, I don't really see a lot of difference. I think this is more of a return to the Ray Lewis era now, or the Mosley era, where you have inside linebacker and you have a 3-down inside linebacker, and we're lucky, I guess, to have that. We're certainly paid a lot for it. And Roquan's impact on the defense certainly made it seem worth it last year in terms of what he was able to provide. And I think having him have the green dot makes all kinds of sense in that thing. So it's a story. It's news getting reported today, and obviously people are picking up on this. I think the impact on the other linebackers and maybe the impact on the other safeties is really the interesting story here. Is what's its impact on Queen and Simpson, and how are the safeties able to align differently based on the fact that none of them will have green dot responsibility.
Yeah, it'll definitely be an interesting development to watch. I mean, I think, in particular, everybody's going to be, keeping their eye on Hamilton and see how he's used, because he really, he can do so many different things. And so that's going to be a really interesting development.
All right, Slava, outstanding always to talk football with you. And this was an interesting topic to share a few minutes on. Tell folks where they can talk football with you.
I'm on Twitter at Slava Cooperstein, no underscore, just all letters.
All right, outstanding. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I promise I'll get back to you really quickly. Always looking for good ideas for content, and somebody who just has an interesting angle they'd like to discuss about the Ravens franchise building scheme, roster construction, whatever it might be. Happy to talk to you and get right back to you. I'll get right back to you very quickly if you contact me. Slava, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.